Hi, Scott. Welcome to the Awakened Heart podcast.
Hi, Nancy. It is a privilege to be here with you today.
Yes, thank you for coming on here. I'm very interested in what we're about to talk about here. We're seeing a lot happening in the world today. Well, first of all, you've got so many. I was just saying before we hit record, I could have you on every week to talk about another aspect of all the things that you've done. Let me kind of go through some of them. You're an Appalachian Trail through hiker, licensed insurance producer, Vipassana meditator, QuickBooks Pro advisor, farm animal rescuer, health coach. You've done 261 days in meditation. You've published at this point 19 books,
Actually, it's 20.
20 books.
A book, and a book, and a book. I got all of these. These are just some of the books that I've
Gosh,
published. These are my
amazing.
props.
Wow. Well, okay. So when we're talking about a certain thing, you can just flip that up and,
Right,
and
yes.
show
This is the book that makes me an expert.
Yeah, you spent 16, 17 nights outside, and it goes on and on and on. And what I wanted to kind of curate this conversation to is what we're seeing happening in the world today. And if you're not on one side of it, the spectrum, you're really demonized, and there's a whole agenda that's going on as we see play out right now. We just had a VP pick that was chosen, and he has a lot of these, these agendas. There's a whole agenda which we're seeing in the gay community, and there's nothing wrong, like we said, with being gay. We embrace them, but there's this whole trans movement that's infiltrating our schools, our young kids. It's being forced down everyone's throats. Like, we're so worried about being called a certain pronoun more so than we are about the human trafficking that's happening like rampantly through the southern border. So there's this whole agenda changing our language, men in women's bathrooms, women's sports, et cetera, et cetera. So you wrote a book, Androphile Pride. Is that how I say that? Androphile?
Correct. Pride. Is that coming out correct, or are those letters backwards?
No, you got it right. It's right there. Yes. Which addresses a lot of these issues. So we're talking about how you don't walk lockstep in line, then you're accused of homophobia, being transphobic. Like, literally, it's just like thrown at. I don't know if anyone's really afraid of those words anymore, because it's thrown just like racist, misogynist. Now it's weird. Like, it's being thrown at us left and right. But there's a whole agenda that's happening. And I would love for you to talk about that, at least to start off. And then we're going to get into some other things as well. But so in your books, you often address the tension between societal narratives and personal authenticity. Can you share what prompted you to explore these deeper truths, particularly regarding the narratives surrounding the gay identity?
I mean, it's all of the books I've written are strongly connected to me and experience. And I reflect on my experience in those books. I reflect on my experience in the podcast. I'm very open with folks about my history. And felt for me, this process of, I came out in the 90s, and it was not a pleasant time to come out. I remember people coming to beat me up. I remember people following me in the malls. I remember people being abusive to me, and it was not a supportive time. And then, you come out into the gay community, and the gay community is very supportive of you, as here we are. You're a gay man, and we're very supportive of you. And then, there's this whole subcontext of kind of like the political correctness of being gay. You need to, if you're a gay man, you should expect all of these things, from feminism to being pro-choice and going on and on and on and on. And if you disagree with those things, then you have been or are considered suffering from internalized homophobia. It's kind of like this piece that you were talking about earlier, Nancy, when you said that people, question something and you're labeled right away transphobic or this, that thing. I mean, it's a dismissive strategy to take so that your voice can't be heard. And both sides do that. Right? I mean, you see people on the Trump side and what they're, or that if we were to make a dividing line of stuff, they're accusing everybody on the other side of being not patriotic, We're the patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you don't agree with us, then you're not a patriot. You're not a true American. Well, you see t-shirts that say, don't like this, pack your bags, we'll help you pack, get out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it comes from both sides. And what that does is really squash people. Interestingly enough, when I wrote this book, there was a movement. There was a movement called androphilia. A guy wrote a book called Androphilia. And it was like a manifesto and he was like, you know what? I'm not gay. Just because I like to, this was his manifesto piece. He's like, just because I like to suck cock does not mean I'm gay. I just like to have sex with men.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this strong manifesto. It was really powerful. And it talked about, your individual identity. And it means just because you want to have sex with men doesn't mean that you have to buy into all of this other stuff. And he chose this term, androphilia, which is love of the same. That's where that came from. And there is on the cover of my book, that's the androphile flag, pride flag. So there, see that? Everybody's got a flag. Everybody's got a flag. And so that was the flag that came out for that movement. And that's actually in my backyard. I needed a cover for the book. I couldn't find anything. I got a flagpole pole in my backyard. I
Resourceful.
took that up so I could have a nice cover. And after he wrote this book, he was very accepting. And then he wrote like another book. And then he himself went off the deep end with views and very hateful stuff, this kind of almost neo-Nazi movement that it was going in.
The guy that wrote this book, right?
The guy that wrote this book, like he himself was not immune. He was like, these gay people are not accepting, I'm accepting, and then went on to become very unaccepting and very strident in this is wrong, this is this is this, this is that. And so that prompted me really write this book. So this book is agenda free, mostly. It starts off talking about the gay movement and saying the first couple chapters are, if you have a problem with a guy who's effeminate in the gay community, right? I think I called him Prancine. I thought was my kind of tongue-in-cheek name for this person who's kind of that someone's like, well, you're not totally accepting, so you've got you need to go to therapy and work it out. In fact, one of the clinical tools, you take a test or an assessment that measures your intelligence or measures your emotional openness or measures your depression. And they ask you questions, on those things. There's actually some assessments homophobia. And one of the questions on the internalized homophobia scale is criticism of leaders in the gay community.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it's stifling you right there. If you're in the assessment tool of determining whether or not you have internalized homophobia, one of the questions is you have criticized people in the gay community who are the leaders. It's the same thing that you see somebody saying, well, if you're criticizing this person, you're, transphobic. Or if you're criticizing that person, you're un-American. It's the roots are the same, which is, squash people, label people, put them down. And so the gay community, who is very welcoming people that agree with them, are not welcoming of gay Republicans. Like you see someone being like, how can you be gay and gay Republican? Or how can you be, gay and MAGA? Or how can you be gay and pro-life? And on and on and on.
It's all putting in these little boxes instead of being, I don't want to use the word fluid. Instead of embracing, like, you don't have to be in this little box. Just like our ethnicities, like who's white and who's really black. We're mixed with so many things. Like, don't put us in all these little boxes. And a lot of us have all these different careers. We're not necessarily a technician, but then we're also like an artist as well. So
right.
It's like sticks and stones.
Right. Yeah. So like one of the chapters in the book is it's about you and only you. And so the second half of the book focuses on identifying And it takes some courage to go through the second half of the book. The second half of the book, it focuses on you looking at your life and identifying the pulls and pushes that are there. Why do you believe this? Do you believe this because you really believe this, or do you believe this because your mother told you so, or your father told you so, or your school told you so, or your community, or is it, what's the piece in that? And so if you look at those pieces and then you go through it and figure out, all right, here's the things that are pulling me in different directions. Let me figure out who I am. You're going to ultimately be much more happy, right? And you know what? The funny thing is, these types of things happen not just with identity around politics. Like people are told, you will be happy once you have a BMW or 3 houses, a timeshare, and this. You'll be happy once you get this degree. You'll be happy when you have this job. Buy this thing, change your hair color to this, get bigger breasts, get this filled in, and on and on and on and on and on. And it's just, people are just chasing things.
Yeah, you're never going to. It's always going to be this next thing and next thing and next thing instead of being happy, learning how to be happy and accepting of yourself. And I know that's you do Vipassana meditation, and a lot of that is so important because then you drop into yourself and you learn to. I mean, this is all there is, like right here, right
Right.
now.
Right
Yeah.
here, right now, as I am.
And we're putting our worth so far out there. And now it's just victim blaming. It's like victim, martyr, and we're just blaming everyone else for our own misery. Well, you're never going to be happy. Nobody else is responsible for you. And if somebody calls you, like misgenders you or mispronouns you or whatever it is, like you really need to go have some therapy for yourself and learn to like not be so swayed like, a reed in a wind because somebody criticizes you or just says something wrong, even by accident. And they're going after people that, there's people that they're just going after one. It's like put outside herself. It's your fault, victim, victim. And I don't know how we've devolved as a society like this so much. And now there's the whole thing about retributions, about how we had slavery in this country. We're a young country, which is horrible. Like it's a horrible history. There's also the Japanese that were locked in encampments. And yeah, gays used to have to hide in the closet for fear of not being accepted or being, bullied and stuff. So we've changed a lot and you have to go through these growing pains in order to change. But it feels like we've just regressed so much since I've been paying attention to the world events, since, we all were told to stay in our homes and wear a mask. That was my eye opener where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I did a deep dive into what the hell was going on. So can you elaborate on what you see as the key components of this agenda? And how does it affect freedom and expression within the community, within the gay community? And we also see how it's affecting the people outside the community.
For me, it feels like one of I'm an old guy. I've been around for a while. I remember what it was like in the 80s and the 70s, right? And how community was different, and even just how you connected.
It was fun.
Now our connection is it's through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keyboard
That's
warriors we
our
have.
connection in the world. I remember when I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I had to carry dimes with me. I had to use a payphone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I had to coordinate when I was communicating with folks or trying to catch up with folks that were hiking ahead of me or behind me. You had to like leave notes for people, and they might get that 24 hours later, 2 days later, might this. Now, the last time I went hiking I did the long trail. It was really disheartening because at night, and this is the point of that. At night, when you're in these trail shelters, so along the Appalachian Trail, there's shelters every 10 miles, 15 miles, something like that. And you sleep in them at night, and they become this kind of place where people stop. And people build relationships with each other that they're going and doing. And that was such a core part of my experience, these friendships that I made. Now, when you go or at least the last time that I was on the trail for an extended period of time, you got to those shelters and people really didn't talk to each other.
They were on their
And what you
phones.
saw was blue lights shining. This is what you
No.
saw. You came in. And people had extra battery chargers and solar chargers to keep this alive.
Mhm.
And they were busy blogging about their experience, doing a video podcast about how their day was. This whole kind of different, they were not on the trail. They're not on the trail. I
Yeah.
mean, they physically, they're going through the motions and carrying the weight and doing that. But because of this, they're not connected on that
Mhm.
piece.
Mhm.
And I think in a same sense, this device has, and the mechanisms in that device, Facebook, YouTube, all the things that engage these micro communities, like you've got a Nancy Walters micro community, right? That until we connected, I had never heard of.
Just
I
me.
never heard of any of that perspective. And that community is strongly connected, but they're not connected to anybody else.
Mhm.
And my theory is that kind of gives people this sense of, all right, we're connected. And there's no reason to talk to those folks in a civil, friendly way because you're just outsiders to who I am. These are the people of who I am, the people on here,
Yeah.
the people that like my posts, the people that when I make a comment, I get yes, 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 yes from people who are in Oklahoma and Georgia and France and Zimbabwe. They're not my neighbors. So there's no incentive for me to talk to my neighbors and connect. It's the same thing with dating, right? We connect mostly on
I
dating
can't
apps
do it.
now.
I can't do it. I think I'm gonna be single forever because I do not want to ever go back on an app. I mean, I'm 54 years old. I just like have different expectations and they're not meeting. But yeah, it's too bad.
Right.
It's devolved so much
Right.
because of the app.
And people like if you just look at dating apps, like if when you were dating, going out into the real world,
You would be approached.
you would go talk to somebody and they might be like, okay, goodbye. They would go. No one would literally just stop in a. You might ask them a question. They might not just not answer the question, turn around and walk away, and then completely ignore you. Right? That's exactly what happens on these apps. You like make, hey, how's your day going? And then you never hear from somebody again.
Hmm.
And they just ghost you, or they're talking to three or four other people and pretending like they're interested. I mean, it's just the dating apps, the experience that we have that I had on the Appalachian Trail with people being disconnected from each other. It all, I think, ties into how we're spreading apart on the political spectrum. They're all just symptoms of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you see what is a solution for us to come together? I mean, it just seems like I said, we've devolved so much. I just can't even believe a lot of stuff that I'm seeing happening out. I call it clown world out there. But how can we all come back together? I mean, we have these technologies. They're good for a lot of reasons, but then they're also so bad for we're addicted to them. The dopamine hit. I've had the dopamine hits before. When things are going in the world, I'm like, I can't get enough. And then I just have to break it. Like I'll stay away from it for a week and then I just am able to clear your head. But literally it is like, you can be addicted to it. And a lot of people are addicted to, like you said, that validation. I don't know you, but I'm getting this. Yes, I'm getting a like. It started with that Facebook. I don't know if so many people are on Facebook as much anymore, but
Because not only have people been siloed around their views, but people have been siloed around the apps that they use, whether it's Reddit or some other chat group that they're involved in. There's some communities. I remember in the early 2000s, when this was going on, there was, and you're working to grow your business, you're trying to grow your business and was everything. I remember this specific because one of the things I do is I write business books and I'm a business coach. And one of the things was to build your own community outside of something like Facebook. So you'd have a website and a discussion forum on the website for, breast cancer survivors. And that became the place where other folks who were struggling with breast cancer went to, got support, all of these things. And you work to reward the people that were in the community and giving good feedback and active. And those folks became stars and moderators and other stuff. So you built this separate community. And it was for everything,
mhm.
right? If you were a farmer and you're growing corn, they were like, you need to create a website and have a support group for corn lovers because that's going to help you sell more corn. And so not only are people separate from, you made a really good point, Nancy, about Facebook. I mean, it's not just on Facebook. They're on separate whole platforms that are running separately that they're connected with.
Pantheon. Is that how you say that? I know that's a big space as well. I mean, it used to be Facebook, like Facebook groups are still really popular. I mean, I only have one app a day isn't enough for me to be immersed in. I mean, I cross post stuff like if I have a podcast, I'll put it on all platforms, but there's just way too many social media sites out there. I've been censored on YouTube too many times for nothing, for my small account, for nothing. I'm just so tired of it. And that's another thing with the narrative. If you're like, oh, this is medical information, even though you're recounting someone's own personal story of an injury, or what did I put up recently? This one was about scalar energy, which is like you can heal through all this like energy that comes from the moon and the stars and homeopathy. Okay, I'm not a doctor, but there's alternatives between big pharma and there's alternatives between, getting that jabby jab woo woo thing. So it's
Right.
become so crazy. So that's another thing, not, lockstep in line. Like we're being censored more and more and more.
So I think one of the things that's going to help us, this may be a future book, and
Idea, bing.
27, and I learned this from a good friend of mine named Jordan Monroe, and he, when something comes up and you're presented with information, he does not take that at face value, whatever that piece is, whatever that is that's there. His approach is to take it a step further and figure out what's in it. Who's trying to convince you to think this certain way? Is it, and where's the money going for? If you think this, where's that? Is that fun? Is that somebody going to be making money off of that eventually? Is there a corporation, or what's behind that? You should approach these things with a sense of scrutiny, rather than bing, 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 dopamine goes off, and you're like, oh, yes, it's got to be correct because you agree with me and I like this and I feel
Right.
good. So let's go down the road together. And so it's this piece of, all right, let's look at what this person is saying. If it's whether it's a podcaster, or are they independent, are they connected, who's funding this, coming from a newspaper, who's funding this, what's the end result of the story? Does this person have a Democratic spin? Does this person have a Republican spin? Where are you getting your source from? And can you trust them? And you could have trusted them 6 months ago. Can you still trust them today? People don't do that. And it's almost like, just like, people never took driver's education courses in college, and I mean in high school, in the 1800s, because there wasn't cars around.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't need to know about driver's education. Then at some point, schools started offering this. You could do it at night. And now a lot of schools offer it as part of their curriculum. You can sign up for a driver's ed course for school. And I think the same thing is going to happen around critical thinking and internet knowledge, whatever, what do you want to call it? Knowledge behavior assessment. Because there is a source out there for every single viewpoint that's from on the spectrum. And you can go buy into that source and go on your happy way of siloing and be totally hoodwinked. Be totally hoodwinked one day and then get totally hoodwinked the next day because of this, that, and the other.
So it's about staying receptive and open. Well, first of all, finding the source and to see if they're credible and reliable, and then staying curious and receptive and open to see where the other person might be coming from, like having empathy for the other person.
Right. Yeah. And how do they know this? Like, I really think, part of it's a piece that, like I have an RV. I have an RV and I tow the RV. I posted a few things online. I went to a few little websites to see some, because I was having problems with my RV. And then I get, in the vast constellation of news items that might be related to me, there's a little article about an RV with like a little catchphrase, 5 mistakes RVers make from an expert. And you click on that, and then something somewhere is like, oh, we want him coming back. We want him coming back. So let's feed him more of that. And next thing you know, you're seeing all these snippets about RVs. Where did that come from? Right? And part of it's because, you got to recognize that whatever these sites are, they want you coming back. to see advertisements and for me to, they want me to buy RV shit. That's what they want. And part of me appreciates that. I needed to finish, repair. My leaf springs broke 2 weeks ago, and I had to get new leaf springs. And I looked it up, got that, and suddenly I'm getting articles about spring manufacturing that I never gave a shit about 2 weeks ago. And so you've got this siloing that's coming from this. You've got these people that are invested in you siloing, and most people are oblivious to that. And then they think the earth is flat.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe, like, I know a lot of people that I follow. When it comes to the flat earth, I'm like, that's going out, and that we've never been to the moon. That's going out there for me. I can't really follow that. It's like I listen to what my gut is saying, my intuition and my gut, like, is it right or is it wrong? And when you tune into that, you're usually not led astray. It's, when we go into I don't know, some of these kind of out there, but okay, respect your perspective. You're not pushing it on me, so have at it. But how crazy was it the first time you either looked something up or you talked about it? Because it's even just been, my friend was in a store and she picked up a bar and she's like, oh, this bar is really good. I really like this brand. She opens up her phone and there's an advertisement from it. And remember, it's like, what? It's like, huh, what is this?
Nobody threw their phones away. Everybody just said, it was like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to buy it. Here tomorrow.
Yeah. It's like, what is this? So they're just like listening to us. That's a little creepy. It's like, oh my gosh. Well, you just got to accept that they're listening to you at all times. So that's
And so part of this piece, I think, is also, having people who are not skeptical or suspicious. That's not a good word, but I would say have some sort of, adult's not a good word, responsible citizen approach to something. It just happened recently, and with me and my friend Jordan. It was right after Trump got his ear tweaked off,
and still look at how that disappeared from them, like, instantly. If this was the other party, it'd be ad nauseum completely.
So that's part of the piece of, like, why are we seeing this and not seeing that in the news headlines?
Yep.
And then he had a piece. I remember there was this piece of we have there's this psychological thing that goes on especially with the flood of information. We tend to not remember things, right? And so the question that was posed by this one person that he stumbled on was, Republican politicians have never called for Donald for the assassination of Biden or something like that. And they were like, do you ever remember someone calling for the assassination of Biden? And you're like, well, I guess I don't. Let me show you the videos of all the people that have in recent times been calling for and they have this video montage of things that were edited out of context. It all flowed in this, like, really powerful, like, scary, like, wow. It gave you the impression that people were actively doing it. And there was this one picture and video of a person who was like Trump being bloody, and she was holding him in a noose or something like that. It was like and I'm like, I don't remember seeing that recently. And I did some research on it. I mean, part of our conversation is to be critical thinkers, right? Let's be critical about this stuff. And I texted him, and because we both went on our separate ways, and I'm like, huh. And I'm Googling, were there Republicans who were out for Biden? And when did this happen? And then I found the clip of the person with the thing that was the Kill Trump montage. And it was from 2015. A comedian was doing something, and she got ostracized or whatever. I think it was Kathy Griffin. If you just want to look that up. She had that little piece. But it was presented in this context like it was 2024. And so I messaged him. I'm like, hey, just so you know, that picture of the
Yeah. Years ago. Yeah. I knew that because I've seen that before.
how is this information getting portrayed and presented, and how and who's behind it, Who wants you to think this way?
Mhm.
Because you can piece together anything.
Yeah. They just did that with Joe Rogan recently, where I actually listened to the whole podcast where I forgot who he was talking with, where they were talking about Tulsi Gabbard and how she slaughtered Kamala after the last debates when they were both running for president. And they took the clips, and then he's like talking about how the other side is going to whatever with the other side. And they edited it in a way, and they talked about Tulsi Gabbard's accolades, about all, military,
Mhm.
all these
Mhm.
accolades. And then Kamala just about, oh, she's going to win because, of the just, what they try to do on the other side and not being fair. Let's just say that. And they edited in such a way that it looked like he was singing the praises. It was MSNBC. They've taken it down since, of Kamala, and she's going to win. And Joe Rogan's pro Kamala, and he definitely is not. But it was edited in such a way, but it's gotten into those minds where maybe, just those little snippets, people are going to believe it. So media is such a disease. I wish it would just get completely dismantled. I don't remember. I mean, I don't watch the regular news. I see clips in here and there. Like you said, it's important to see where it's coming from, seeing the full clips. Like, we see Trump edited all the time. And I'm like, that's not what he said. And that's not what he meant. But I just wish they would let's just like report the news. I'm tired of these talking heads. It's very biased one way. I mean, the main news very is. It's like, can you just, and then all this like, orange man bad kind of, just as an example, and the whole narrative, like the people that didn't get the vaccines back at the time, like how we were dirty and we were like jeopardizing people's health, like it literally is responsible. It's propaganda. It's always been there, even before there was television, even before. Thank God we've got social media because we can see different perspectives instead of taking everything that's spewed at us like, a Bible verse or something. We can see how everyone, like, they turn them. Like, we can see how, like, we know it wasn't a lone shooter, but whatever. People are going to go, you're saying that Trump's Hitler. Of course, someone's going to go after him. When you're saying that, unvaccinated are causing all the diseases, like, we're lucky that didn't go to like Nazi level, like against, and I can see then what happened in Germany back at the time where there's propaganda against the Jews came out and how everyone turned against them. So will that ever reform like the media? Can we just dismantle it all? There's independent journalists, which I love, that tell at least the other perspectives, but just be fair in reporting. Let us make our own decisions in everything, just like medical misinformation. Like, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions.
Well, I think it comes down to, it's not the media that needs to be dismantled. It's our brains that need to be
Yeah.
dismantled because
And they're
we
feeding
allow
into it.
ourselves to get sucked in. I just pulled up one thing on my phone here. This is not even related to anything political, but this is the type of stuff that sucks us in. The headline is, so let me ask Nancy, do you eat chocolate? Okay. Many chocolate products contaminated with heavy metals, study finds. One type stood out. Dum, dum, dum. Right? I mean, it's written in a way that is like, bet you're like, oh, I eat chocolate. Could I eat that thing? Oh my God. You click on it and
What
you're
is
reading
it?
and you get more. Yeah. What is it? What is it? What is
Yeah.
it? And then you're
Help
like,
me, help
oh,
me.
right. And it's not, it's around everything, right? Psychologists, I see this all the time because I'm a coach and a counselor, and I'm an outdoor person, so I get these pieces that are like, the most important art of giving and receiving in intimate relationships according to psychologists. You're like, oh, maybe I want to look at that because I'm single. Do I want to? It's so much of it. It's the same thing with politics. It's like what did they say that Trump said a couple? Christians don't need to vote anymore.
I
That
saw the whole
whole
clip.
piece, whole thing, right?
He's a dictator. He's never going to leave. Like, no, that's not what he's 78 years old. He's not going to be able to stay in power forever.
People don't watch the whole clip,
Right.
Because they are convinced Trump evil. And so they're like, oh, yeah, he's never going to vote anymore.
Well, Obama's still running the show how many years later? Come on.
Yes, same piece like that, or that Joe Biden isn't really there; he's an actor. That other folks are saying because
Well,
they've
he did
got.
get taller. Did you see how tall? I'm like, He did wander onto the plane recently when everyone was getting off, so that is a Joe Biden move, but how
Yeah.
like, he disappeared and he came back taller, so I don't know what they're doing over there, but I feel actually bad for him. I don't particularly like him, but I don't like particularly like him. I saw this dementia even before, Basement Joe and stuff, and I don't particularly. Well, I definitely think he's better than who they're propping up right now, but I actually feel bad for him how he was treated by his party. He was forced out, threatened with the 25th Amendment, and they're treating him horribly. And he needs to retire. I think it's elder abuse at this point too. Like I said, I don't like him, but I wouldn't wish the worst upon him. Whatever he's done, he's old. I've got a mom that has dementia and Alzheimer's. I wouldn't want to keep propping her up on the stage over there. I mean, I think he's they're power hungry as well, but it's just like, yeah, let's just like see the whole clips. Okay, he said this. Have you looked at the policies? Have you seen what's going on? That like we need to do better discernment than just what's thrown at us.
And
And
there are people in politics that are
I hate
on both
politics.
sides that are looking to, get extra
Yeah.
gas from revving people up and not necessarily, making decisions. And so, we've got all this drama going on, and what changes are we really seeing happening? Because is there any legislation getting passed? Not much
Yeah.
around stuff, very little around stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very glad that for all my lifetime and years, I never paid attention to politics until, of course, 2020, because we were all being told to stay in our homes and wear a mask. And, I don't even think the Jabby Jew was out yet, but I knew it was coming. So I really looked into who was red, who was blue. I mean, I knew Trump was there, but I really looked into it a lot. But I'm glad I did it for all those years. I'm like, has it always been like that? This is horrible. Like, and I still try to someone said to keep your perspective at 30,000 feet, like kind of be in a more observing, neutral area. And I have been triggered. That's when I'm like freaking scrolling like crazy, especially after what happened in the last month. I've just literally been like addicted to everything that's going on. And I know it's not healthy and I need to pull away. I actually did go camping for a week and I did pull away, but it's like I wake up in the morning now just scared about our country. And I've got to be able to like get back into a meditation. And do you meditate every day, right? Do you do Vipassana or do you do some others?
Well, Vipassana and Anapana kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
Anapana is just about your breath. And so that's a
Okay.
great thing to do if your mind is wandering away.
Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself, what I would hold out to your listeners to think about is that, and I've catch myself doing this. This is a red flag. If you get up, in the middle of the night to pee, and then check your phone before you go
God,
back.
no.
Or you get up in the morning, make your cup of coffee, and then check your phone.
I've started to do that. I'm like, I'm going to sit and have my coffee and see what's happening. I need to break that and go back
Right,
into my
right.
reading.
What's going
And
on? Tell me
mm-hmm.
what. And suddenly,
Yeah.
What's going on is what's around you,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
not not here.
Yes. And I
And we live
100%
in this.
realize it. Mm-hmm.
We live in this world. One of the. I'm working on a book that's focused on incorporating Buddhist precepts in my life, in your life, and what you can do to actively do that. And there's some parts that I couldn't get my head around. And I talked to a Buddhist monk about this. And one of the precepts that I just couldn't get my head around was this Buddhist precept about wearing adornments, about, extra, pretty clothes, doing your hair. That's that. And I said, I just can't get my head around that. He said, if the Buddha was around today, heavy adornment that he would be and be concerned about is Instagram and people posting these, perfect shots of themselves in some situation that then gets shared over to other people. And then other people see that and then are like, oh, I feel like shit because I don't look like that, or I don't have that hair, or I'm not in
Filters.
that piece.
It's not
And
natural.
and 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 there's this just push to go on and do that. People take pictures of their food that they're eating
Mm-hmm.
and share that. Like, when I was younger, we went on vacation and you were on vacation for 2 weeks and maybe it took 2 rolls of film, 24 pictures in each roll, 48 when you got home, had
Mm-hmm.
no idea what the fuck those pictures were of.
Mm-hmm.
When you got home, they
It's
were
like,
like
damn, they're
this and that.
blurry.
And now we're like, where was I the other day? I was doing a a race, a mud race. It's called the Savage Race, with my dogs, and I'm going under the barbed wire. And I gave somebody my phone, and I was like, take 40 pictures, or whatever. And anyone's like, and I'm looking at the pictures, and like, there's a picture of me like this, and then there's a picture of me like this, and I'm going back and forth between this picture and that picture and this picture and that picture. I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't make any difference. Really, it's just, but we're so focused on this image of perfect that to the point where we're comparing a picture like this to a picture like this. Like, in a quarter of an inch, your head is different, and you're like, which one's better? Which one's better? Which one's better? All right, that one's better. And that's the same thing that's fueling the political divides, perspectives, all that stuff. It's this kind of this adornment of who we are, which
people get really mean, and the guy goes, stop reading the comments. People get really mean. I mean, I've commented just on some posts, just my own, nothing politically biased or anything, but just supportive, whatever. Oh my gosh, I've had keyboard warriors, and they're just attacking me, and they're like, go into my own page and criticize, oh, you've got the big forehead. Or I think it was just some people were coming over the border wall, and there's nothing like, there's so much happening that I think I just said something like it needs to be closed. There's a lot of fentanyl and human trafficking, and women are getting raped. Oh yeah, I got attacked left and right, and criticizing like on my posts, and they've gone onto my podcast and given me bad reviews. And it's like, you're a freaking, I'm like, okay, keyboard warrior, take it back a notch. Yeah. And it's funny because when you're talking about that, look at me. And when I first got on Instagram, I got on in 11, I think, when it started, and then I got off and I got back on in 16 when I was doing a lot of traveling. And this is when everybody was like, there's the mountains. And they're like, what was the whole thing? It was like, doing, they had all this, like, we're in the back and their arms are out, and like, people have fallen off mountains in Bali or into a waterfall. I've had tour guides that are like, yeah, we lost some people because they sat on the edge to get a photo and went over the other side. But there's somebody I wanted to mention before we go on to some of the last questions. Celeste Barber, I don't know if you know who she is. I think she's a comedian, and she's got an Instagram page. And I would have no idea that women are like this, because she'll take videos that are women like where they're wearing next to nothing, and maybe they're dancing. This is how mom dance around the living room, or they're pouring something on themselves, and then she does it. I mean, she's a regular sized girl, and she'll put on a little bikini, and she just she'll have the clip of them, and then she'll have the clip of her doing whatever they're doing. It's hysterical. It's good. I'm like, women really go out there half naked like that, and putting that out there. It's so suggestive. But anyway,
see, this is the world we live in.
Yes.
Right? Celeste Barber.
Yes. Show it when she makes fun of her.
Yeah, that is the. Oh yeah, there she is. There she is. Right there.
Yes.
Little piece, right? That's the fact that I can do this, or no, actually not the fact that when you said, Celeste Barber, and I thought, well, I don't know who that is, and this device overruled you for 15 seconds. So for 15 seconds, just now in this podcast, I was not present with you because my mind went, which is why I don't bring my phone to podcast. I usually set my phone in the other room.
I turn them all off just because to just get a better Wi-Fi setting. But I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you saw that, because now you know what I'm talking about.
And this piece that I just accidentally exemplified here is the same piece that's driving the
It's all
difference.
accessible. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, just a few more questions before we go. I did want to dive into, you just had a new book come out, and I know that you're really interested. Like, this is kind of what's lighting you up right now, and it's about mDNA and healing.
Yeah, so I have 3 books around psychedelics that just came out. This is the first book that I published, which is the Psychedelic Integration Workbook. And I just published, just last week, the Psychedelic Preparation Workbook. They go hand in hand. And then I did a piece of MDMA and grief, which has a part of in the appendix that was penned by Congressman Morgan Luttrell, the Republican congressman from Texas, who he himself went out, and I don't know if it was ayahuasca or if it was psilocybin, but he had PTSD from his service for our country, and it was plaguing him.
Mhm.
And psychedelics helped him step through the other side
Mhm.
and kind of integrate that. So there's a piece in the written by him. It's a privilege to have him as part of that book.
Mhm.
And so it's the same thing. There's a lot of misinformation out there about psychedelics and its therapy, and people on both sides. Just like people on politics, there's this like machine of people saying evil, evil, evil.
No,
Best
it's
thing
not.
since
Like,
Jesus.
right. And I know people that have done, like, I've done ayahuasca maybe two different times, and I don't necessarily need to do it again. I feel I can get there from breath work, but if I was called by the medicine to go do it again, I would do it again. Ugh, it tastes like, ugh, it's awful. I never threw up, thank God, because I hate
Grow
throwing
up.
up. No, I guess it's the vine from Hawaii that's not as, it's a little milder to my stomach. People are throwing up left and right around me. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm turning my head away from the mesa. My head's going over there because I don't care what they say. So yeah, I've done that, but then some people keep going over and over and over. I feel like that can kind of be an addiction within the self to go every month. It kind of like when people do like the Landmark Forum, or they do some of these other like Tony Robbins, or they follow these people around left and right because they're still not being able to integrate, like with your workbook and everything. And your pre-workbook is great because you have to learn how to integrate that within yourself and not be reliant to something in the external.
Exactly. Exactly. If you do what does it really doesn't matter what the experience is. You could actually, change the title to the Tony Robbins integration work
Seriously.
and just go through it and be like, all right, what am I? Those same questions would help you around taking those learnings and making those changes in your life so you're navigating in the direction you want and not being dependent whatever that person is, whether it's Tony Robbins or the Landmark Forum or ayahuasca or psychedelics.
Right, right, absolutely. Now, real quick, let's touch upon. I know there's a lot of people talking about, like, well, first of all, ayahuasca, I can't say it. I'll just say mushrooms, and like that one that's like the toad thing. It's done in ceremony. It's very important to do these kind of things in ceremony and do a journey and having somebody that can guide you. And I found, I mean, I did it with 10 other people. There were two, shamans there that are able to guide us. And I've heard of some people that were doing it outside of a nightclub. Oh God, I can't imagine doing it outside a nightclub in a room and not in people are wandering off. So there's ways to do it in ceremony. And then there's MDMA where people are microdosing to help them, like maybe with PTSD. What's the word for it? How do you feel about each and how it can benefit?
I have not myself experimented with microdosing. I use when I in the book that I wrote on MDMA and grief, I talked about my own grief journey for my spouse and going through that and how MDMA kind of opened pathways and gateways for me
Mm-hmm.
to explore that. MDMA itself is not a hallucinogen. You're not going to hallucinate when you're on MDMA. It gives you this feeling of incredible empathic warmth and love. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe we need to take everybody on the two sides of the
Yeah, let's do
lock them
it.
in a room and give them all MDMA.
Let's do it. And have
Yeah,
them be
we'll all
led.
be,
We'll get
we'll
a
all be
couple
hugging each
facilitators.
other.
Yeah, let
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
I'd be like, I love you, man. I do. I love you
Yeah,
too.
because MDMA is ecstasy, right? I'm thinking
Yeah,
what is the other one where it's like a death? Is that MDMA as well, or isn't that something else?
it's like, well,
It's like a little death.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring.
MDMA. It's like a.
A way to think about another way to think about MDMA when you're dealing with those darker emotions like PTSD or depression or anxiety, it's because it's fueling this kind of really good feelings, physiologically, that's what it's fueling. And your brain might be, our brain triggers like negative emotions and impacts us physiologically. So that MDMA kind of acts like bubble wrap
Mm-hmm,
around
mm-hmm,
your experience. So you're able to go to those darker emotions
mm-hmm,
that you might not be able to go to and talk about and experience because you've got this extra good, loving, empathic, joyous feeling.
mm-hmm,
And explore those and talk about them. And then you come out on the other side where you have talked about those things and it's almost like this paradoxical piece where you've had some good feelings
Mhm.
while you're talking about those things and able to explore them where you might not have been able to and access them. And then afterwards, your perception of those things are different, which makes sense because you've explored them. Think of it like somebody who is watching a movie, all their history has been watching a movie, the Titanic. No, that's not a good example. Never mind. Somebody who's been watching a movie of taking a deep dive into some, coral reef in Australia. And they've seen that. They've even seen high definition IMAX movies of coral reefs. And then one day they take a flight to Australia. They've learned to scuba dive and they actually go and swim in that coral reef. Their memories next week about that coral reef are going to be much different
Mhm.
because they actually were there,
Mhm.
right? And that scuba suit that they were in swimming around is like the MDMA. It allowed them to go into that
Mhm.
piece and access it directly instead of just this movie memory piece.
What is the best way for people who wish to do MDMA or any kind of psychedelic? How can they approach it responsibly and safely?
So, I have talked about the trip safe framework around looking into whatever psychedelic substance you're using. And that entails, TRIPSAFE. People can Google that and Google my name. It's in the preparation workbook. There's a whole section on going through the trip safe framework
Mhm.
to make sure that you've done your research, your motivations are
Mhm.
clear around this, your expectations are clear around this, you're clear about where you're getting it from, what the dosage is, in a safe environment, that you have an emergency plan. When I did the MDMA, I had a trip sitter with me who also happened to be an EMT. So I
Mhm.
was
Safe.
ready.
Yeah,
I felt safe.
that's great.
And you want to make sure that because you don't want to take something that's adulterated and is
Oh
going to
my
cause
God.
damage. You want to
I'd
make
be
sure that
so
you're
afraid
doing.
now. I'd be so afraid to take things. I mean, especially anything powdered and stuff with all the fentanyl that's in our world. So that's why it's important to go through the checklist and make sure that you're I mean, don't take anything nowadays. Like it's crazy, but something like MDNA, of course, get it from somebody that you trust, that you've done your research. And do you have particular
And of course,
links?
for those listening, I feel like I need to say for Nancy and I that neither of us are endorsing to anybody taking any illegal behavior in any kind, and we are not
Not at all.
encouraging criminality of any kind. Blah 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 blah. Okay, that's enough.
Yes, yes, and we're not medical doctors, so make sure to consult them before doing anything
You're gonna
like
have
that.
that.
I'll put that disclaimer in there. So for that leads us to
I wrote this first book about integration, and then somebody said to me, "You didn't include a disclaimer in that book?" And I'm like, "Oh no, shit, I didn't include it in that book." They're like, "Well, you should have talked to a lawyer before you read that book." So all the other
gosh.
books now have this like
Yeah, you
lawyer-esque
have to. Yeah.
disclaimer. And
Maybe
then
I
I
should.
discovered, I'm like, holy shit, everybody's written these books has a disclaimer that
Yeah, maybe I should
don't
do
arrest
that.
me.
I should do that on this one too. Yeah, the disclaimer. This is our disclaimer for this episode. So, okay, so that
Don't
leads
get what I'm
me
saying.
to
Fuck
some of
off.
your books as we wrap up. I'd love for people to know where to find you, how to best work with you or see your works. And do you have like direct links to some of the books? I'd like your Trip Safe and what we just talked about here. I don't know if you have a direct PDF link or
Yes,
something that I can
I
share.
can I can include some of those
Okay.
pieces when for you to include in the show notes. I have published in the what's it, the psychedelic information journal, which is out there. Those Some of these articles are there. You can easily find me just by googling G. Scott Graham author. So there's my name right there. If you do G. Scott Graham space author, you'll find all my
Yeah,
books
he comes right
because
up.
Google knows who I am. I'm on Amazon. They're available in print and PDF. And literally, once you do G. Scott Graham, you'll find everything. Probably this
Hmm.
podcast, like lots. I've been on 60 some other podcasts.
Wow.
Google's flowing with information
They
about
know
me.
where to find you.
They know where to find me.
So when that disclaimer is not off in my podcast, like that disclaimer, you didn't do a disclaimer, they'll come knocking on your door. I saw something crazy recently where I think it was in the UK. They've gone batshit crazy over in the UK, where they knocked on his door and a police came in because he posted something on Facebook. Like, meanwhile, there's rioters happening out there and like, um, what is it, Allah Akbar and all that happening out over there. Like, I mean, nothing's wrong with Muslim religion, but some of it, it is not so good what's happening on over there. They knocked on the door and they were arresting him. They were talking to him about something on Facebook. I mean, they did this over the pandemic too. If you just said anything against, it's crazy. That's what I see happening, these totalitarian stuff. Leave me alone. At least you know how to survive out in the wild. So you'll be good if
Yes,
they
I
ever
do.
come knocking on your door.
If there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm
Yes.
all set. I'm all set.
I'll be seeking you out. I got my bear mace though. I don't know. I mean, I learned how to use a gun, but I don't know how to use it well enough to get a gun because I'll end up shooting myself. So I have bear mace next to my bed. And if I go camping, I have bear mace. Anyway, this has been such a great
Hey,
conversation. I'm
that,
so glad we
please,
had it.
Nancy, I just wanted you should make sure that if you ever go back on the dating scene, you hide that bear mace before the date comes over.
Right? Yeah, it'll be hidden. Nobody's getting in my bedroom for, we can date, but nobody's getting in that bedroom for a long, long time. You have to be worthy. But I have one more question that I ask all my guests before we go, and that this can be related to both of what politics, it can be related to psychedelics, it can be related to how we relate to each other. And that is, what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
I would say there's two pieces in the awakened heart that are really key. And they're both outgrowths of, or three pieces, I would say, that are related to that. And that is living with compassion, living with what Buddhists call loving kindness, which is kind of warmth and joy towards other folks. And then the third piece is cultivating a sense of sympathetic joy, which is really hard in this world. And sympathetic joy is really where you recognize that, everybody's really struggling. And so this person who is having some great thing happen in their life, that's nothing for you to be jealous about. That's something for you to be joyous about
Mm,
because they got a new car and you don't, rather than being like, oh,
yes.
you have joy in that other person's success because ultimately all of us are going to get sick, all of us are going to have misery, all of us are going to
Hmm.
see our loved ones die, all of us are going to ultimately die. And
Hmm.
so there's no escaping that misery. When
Hmm.
no amount of money you have, no amount of mansions you have, no amount of political spectrums you have in the government or in your state or whatever, nothing is going to take away the fact that you are going to have misery, just like I'm going to have misery.
Hmm.
And so when we see some success or we see somebody moving forward, we should be joyous for that because the real truth is that we're all suffering out.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And I'm going to take that with me out into the world along with some more meditation, getting back into my meditation practice because it's about to get even wilder in these next couple months.
Yeah,
So need to have wits about us. Anyway, well, it's been wonderful, Scott. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
absolutely.
All right. You take care. Have a great day.
Okay.